Hello.
Hi, everybody.
That's Mel. I'm Roy. We're back for another Facebook Live. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. We are coming live to you from Lansing, Michigan, and it's way hotter than we thought it was going to be today, so we were complaining about that earlier.
Humid, very, very humid.
Is it humid? So today we're going to talk about framing a little bit, about how to put, for your stained glass project, how to put a zinc camera on the outside and how to put a wood frame on it. And I think we were trying to, I mean, people ask us about this all the time, so we thought, man, this would be a great one to do for the Facebook Live. And we're not sure if we've done the zinc framing part before, so if you're watching us, you probably assume we haven't either, but you can always check out our videos on our YouTube channel. That's what I think. It's got to be there somewhere, or the video section of Facebook. You can find our videos there. But we're going to do the zinc anyways, in case you haven't seen it. Now, just to make it go a little faster, we did pre-cut some of the parts for everything we're going to show you today, just to make it kind of go a little faster. And if you have any questions, I mean, feel free to make a comment below, or you can always message us on Facebook or Instagram, and you can always send us an email at facebook@delphiglass.com. So there you go.
It's pretty obvious.
Is it?
I know you're trying not to. I know, but it's okay.
Hey, and also while I'm thinking about it, if you guys got ideas about other presentations or demos or whatever you'd like us to do, feel free to reach out to us. I mean, because we
could use some suggestions.
Yeah, we could use suggestions because our ideas aren't very
exciting.
good.
Okay, so
here
we're
we go.
going to start with zinc first?
Yeah, zinc. Okay. So what we're going to be working with today is a zinc framing stock. It is called or referred to as an adjustable U zinc. So I think if Kaylee gets a good look at the corner of that, what the adjustable part means is that we can actually pry open the channel here in case your glass is a little thicker. You have some textured glass or something, and so it'll fit into the channel a little bit better. This particular one I have in my hand is a 3/8 inch zinc, and the sizes of the zinc, and it's the same thing with lead too. The size refers to what's called the face of the cane, which is this part here, right?
Not the channel.
People think that a lot.
They do.
They
think the channel's going to change, and it doesn't really.
Yep, the channels are pretty standard for the most part, especially in the zinc framing stock. It's pretty much all inside channels the same. It's just the face, and some of it's just purely aesthetic, right? Like what sort of size you might like on it. And some of it could be structural. So if you're doing something bigger, usually we would probably recommend some of the larger ones. I think Val grabbed those.
Here they are right here, right? So, I actually did grab an H too. Here it is. Because it comes in zinc too, and I kind of thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I've not ever used it much, but it would, it's H means you would put glass on either side of it, and sometimes instead of maybe running a solder seam, I don't know if people use that as a little bit more of a structural thing, but you could use that in place of, if you wanted to in the center. So it does come in an H, and it does come the same sizes as the U channel, so 1/4 inch,
yeah,
1/4 inch, 3/8, half. Yeah.
And
that's what these are down here. So like Roy said, you can look at it. I think when I laid them that way, you can tell, what we're really talking about is just this visual face. So it's just making your border seem thicker. That's really kind of all the different sizes do. So, on a piece like this, smaller pieces, 1/4 inch would be fine. Unless you want a bigger look. I mean, if you want that bigger border look, then you could use a 1/2 inch, but mostly we use the 1/4 inch on the smaller.
We normally do. I use 3/8. I grabbed the 3/8 on this one just because I like it a little bit better, but you're right. A lot of times, I think there's sometimes a slight misconception about how much you get from just by going bigger. You gain a little bit of strength by going to wider, but it's not super dramatic, So I think, like I said, a lot of times it's probably more of an aesthetic sort of decision. One reason why I picked the 3/8 and or the 1/4 inch is I have a piece of the wood framing stock that we'll talk about later, but this fits right inside the channel. And so if you look at it from the side, you can see where it should sort of disguise it where you don't see it. You would see a little bit of the 1/2 inch poking out, and I can tell you sometimes, depending on how good your framing job is, sometimes you'll see a little bit of the zinc, but we'll we'll talk about that when we talk about the wood framing. So I have a small panel here that we were going to put some zinc around, and I think Val and I were talking about who's going to do what part.
You're going to measure.
I'm measuring and cutting. Okay, good.
We'll talk about the measuring because that's,
yep.
That's, you know, I don't know.
That
Does
can be
everybody,
tricky,
does
so-
everybody do it like we do it? Do you think?
I'm not really sure.
I'm not
So,
either.
you know, there's a couple of different ways of approaching the zinc around the outside. One is we could cut a 45-degree angle here in the zinc, right? And then cut a 45-degree in that one, and then they would come up and they would meet up in this nice little 45. I stopped doing that years ago for a couple of reasons. One is, if you're not familiar or had the experience of trying to cut a 45-degree angle in some zinc, not the easiest thing to do. The other reason why is, probably the main reason why is often my panel might not be exactly, 90-degree angles, right? They might
Right.
be close, but
And
so
you tend to cover it up anyway with the solder. When you solder
Yeah.
the corner, and when you solder these two together, if you have it mitered, you kind of just put a glob of solder over it, and it kind of doesn't. It's kind of like a lot of extra work,
exactly.
and
I
it
think
doesn't
so, too,
really
yeah.
pay off.
Yeah, like you spent 4 hours trying to get
Yeah,
a
trying to
perfect
get that
45-degree
thing
angle thing,
Yeah,
and then you just cover it with solder and nobody
Right.
knows it. And then we're gonna, so the technique that we do here is we just kind of butt them up against each other. So you can see I've done, one of these corners set up here. So this is the vertical piece here, horizontal piece, and you'll see that then just butts up against there. And as Val pointed out, once you solder that, I mean, no one's gonna know whether you cut a 45 or not. And there's another reason why we like doing this. We like butting up the corners, and then once I get it soldered out, we can, or whoever gets this soldered, we'll show it to you, and it'll probably make a little more sense that way. So let me show you how we're going to measure for this. This, as I mentioned before, I'll have Kaylee show this again. So this is an adjustable U zinc, and one thing you're probably going to notice is that the glass does not sit to the back of the cane. It rests inside the channel there. So it's about 1/8 of an inch space that's there. I could measure my panel, then add on 1/8 of an inch, or I'd have to add on 1/4 of an inch, right? Because there's 2 pieces of zinc on either end, and it involves a lot of math, which I'm not a big fan of math. So I'm going to show you how a little shortcut for doing that.
But let me just say too, because this I get asked quite a bit, and we do it in a certain way so that the openings are top bottom.
Yeah.
Okay, so me for this, because this isn't exactly obvious, but we're framing this to be like this.
Yes.
Okay,
that's
so
correct.
this is the way it would hang. So when he said, so basically what we're gonna have, I always think of it like goalposts. Like it's gonna be, these side longer ones are gonna be vertical. These vertical ones are going to be above and actually then sort of below down here. So it's like these sides will be like the goalposts, and then these fit down between them.
Like the crossbar.
Like a crossbar. Or like a
We're using
goalpost.
We're using the
Oh, the crossbar.
That's what it's called.
Okay, so yeah, I know.
football analogy.
I guess
Lost
I
a
should
few
know more
people.
about it before I start
Sorry.
pretending like
You got
that.
the goalpost part.
Okay,
right?
I got that
That's
part right.
positive.
But anyway, I just think that's because then once these get soldered, this is open up here, and that's kind of what we're going for, because often we'll countersink rings down in there, or it allows water to, I don't know, that's just what we've always done. So
Yeah.
Okay,
Of course,
but
we
anyway.
like that way. So
sorry,
let me show you. But
didn't
as,
mean to butt in, just
but
wanted
as
to make
Val
sure.
was pointing out, we're gonna. So if you're looking at this piece, again, these are the sides, are the vertical pieces, so it is going to hang like this. So we always cut the vertical pieces first. So always cut sides first, not top and bottom. And like I mentioned, I already have one cut, so we're going to do that one later. But the cane comes, I guess we didn't mention it earlier, the cane comes 6 feet in length. I've already cut some of this already, so it's not quite 6 feet. I'm thinking at the moment, I wish I would have cut it again, just to make it easier to handle. Sometimes I just cut them in half, just so they're not so awkward to handle. But the other thing I like to do is always have a couple of small pieces of extra zinc just laying around my studio. That way, what I'm going to use these for is spacers. And I don't really, they don't need to fit the whole thing. They just really need to have a small piece there, because as Val was mentioning, because of that, that gap here in the back of the cane, I have to compensate for that. And so I'm going to do that by putting this in here. And then slide these up. And then this one, I'm gonna slide it up and then slide this one over till they meet. I'm having a problem because of
this.
the wood. Sorry, that wood. I'm like a prima donna. That thing. I can't work because that wood's in my way.
It's just bothering me.
That's right. So I'm using these as spacers. So this tells me where I need to put the zinc. Now, if I remove this piece, you can see how much the cane on the vertical side is really going to hang over, as Val was pointing out, right? So the goalposts, if you want to think of them that way.
So those are just so that you can make sure you get even.
Yeah, and so then we're going to slide it on. So now I'm going to mark it up here where I'm going to cut it. And I'm using a Sharpie because that's what I like. And come in here, mark it. Now, I'm sure, Val and I teach lots of classes here, and I've taught this to like a billion people. And usually, you mark it however it makes sense to you. I always mark it, so I have to, when I'm cutting it, I want to cut the marker off. That's what helps me remember, okay, I got to cut the marker off, right? So if you can mark it, I could have marked it the other way where I left the marker and cut to the other side of it. But again, for me, it makes more sense to cut the marker off. So hopefully I think I did that. So I have, there's a variety of different ways of cutting the zinc. I mean, zinc is a relatively easy material to cut. You could use bring one in, so it was, not very good at.
I'll tell you, I'll run and get it. I'll tell you though, for what it is, it really does work really well.
It does.
And people think you have to have this kind of big chop saw and everything, but the other one, the little miter saw, works really, really well. So let me go get it.
Well, I'm a dude, so we gotta have power tools. Is that how that works? So as Matt was mentioning, we really do have this nice little handy miter saw and setup, which is not expensive and pretty easy to use. Just I'm lazy and we're in a bit of a hurry, so I'm going to use this really nice Studio Pro miter chop saw. Just because it's fast. I mean, if you're like me and you're in a hurry, you want to get things done. This really saves a ton of time. So one of the things about this particular saw is that I can bring it down and I can see where the blade's going to hit. So this is where I can sort of see. I'm going to throw on some safety glasses here, guys. And then, but I can bring down, I can see right where I'm going to cut this, right? So this, I can slide the cane wherever I want, just so I can get it just right where I want to cut it. Now, this particular saw works best if you turn it on while the saw is up, while the blade is up. So not resting onto the material and then turn this blade on. It doesn't like that so much. So the other really nice thing about this particular saw is it's got this nice little safety switch. So when I push this button in, the saw comes on, and then as soon as I let go, it shuts off. So I always tell people, like in classes, if you think something's going wrong, just take your thumb off it. It shuts off immediately. It kind of just reduces the risk. So let me go in there and cut this. Nice. That fell on the floor. Isn't that big? So sometimes you'll get a little burr on the end of here if you're cutting it by hand, or especially on the power saw. This one isn't too bad, but I usually use like at home I have just a metal file, and I'll just hit the metal file. Around here we have this tool called an Abrasive Stone. Maybe you're familiar with that. People use it sometimes for grinding glass, but it'll just take off that little bit of a burr that might be on there. And then we're going to set it on there. I'm going to just match it up with my samples. It looks like that one fits pretty good.
Did you talk about the fit? About that, this is the one place where we really need them to butt up. We need them to touch.
Yeah.
Because we're just going to put a drop of solder just to hold there. On this cane, we can't, like running a solder seam, we can't like bring it along or move it around. It also, if the gap is too big, it won't bridge it. It'll just keep separating. So you want to try to cut these the best you can.
Yeah, I agree with that. You're right. As Val said, the solder won't jump over a gap. So what I've done in that situation, where not everybody cuts it perfect, and I've cut them short a little bit. I'll take a piece of copper wire and then put it in the gap and then solder that in to fill the gap in. Again, you're going to fill it with solder, so no one's going to see that you put a little piece of copper wire in there to compensate for that. So I cut this side. I've already cut which is my right side. my advice is to measure and cut each side independently. So I wouldn't just cut this one
Twice.
and then cut it twice, right? Because again, it's possible that maybe my panel's not perfectly square. It's possible.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb, I think, on any of these stuff. Just measure each piece for where it goes. Don't.
He's on the floor.
That's all right.
So this one's got a nice little burr on it. Let me take that off. So this is the piece that I used. Now I'm going to do the horizontal pieces, right? The top and bottom.
What's it called?
It's called the crossbar.
Crossbar.
In,
Of the goal.
of the goalposts.
We'll quiz you later, Val.
Yeah, I guess I didn't know that. Crossbar.
Yeah, because like when you're trying to kick a field goal and you hit the crossbar, that's a bad thing. So.
Okay.
Okay, so
You
here
want
we
to talk about that too, or no?
go.
No,
The
this.
crossbar. No. Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, you talk about it.
Well, oh, okay. So
Yeah, we'll show it real quick.
yeah. So the other thing about when you're fitting the cane, sometimes, or when you're even doing your panel, soldering your seams, it's really a good idea not to go all the way to the edge, because you do have a raised bump there if you take the solder all the way to the edge, and then when you try to fit the cane on it, it makes it kind of hard. So like Roy pointed out, the inside we can put a tool in there and kind of wiggle it and make it a little thicker or open it up a little bit more. But it's easier to just not run your solder to the end, because what we'll ultimately do once this is already framed and tacked, we will bring this solder seam out and attach it to the outer frame. So we're going to be working that seam anyway. So if you can just remember to leave it back by a ½ inch or so,
Yeah.
it just makes your framing go a little easier. It's not so hard to jam it on.
Yeah, I think I actually did. I don't know how well you can see here on the bottom. I
Yeah.
actually ran this seam all the way to the end, and then just before we did this, I flattened that with a soldering iron just so it was flat. As
But
Val
see,
pointed
this one
out,
right
so
here
that-
didn't.
Yeah, that one I just did and soldered
Yeah.
to the end. I
Right.
remembered on the other ones, but
Yeah.
didn't remember on all. So we're gonna slide this one on top here, and I'm gonna put this one back in place and slide it up just till it hits. And then this, I can tell you, like I said, I've taught lots of people how to do this, and this is the trickiest part for most people. So the horizontal pieces, or the top and the bottom, are gonna sit inside the side pieces. And so you can see here how that kind of makes sense, right? That's sitting inside there. So here, I put it here because this tells me where I need to cut it, right? I'm just gonna follow up that one and then follow it straight up. And then I'm gonna cut it so that this piece is gonna rest in between those two. Hopefully that makes sense. And if it doesn't, reach out to us. I'll try to do a better job. So again, I'm gonna come over here, use the power saw. Oh, did you show them the miter?
Right.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So it's just a handheld little razor saw, but they worked really good. And then that's the miter box, which
Yeah, it's a little miter box.
is not like it used to be. It used to be wood.
And,
There we go. There it is.
Again, just knocking this off in case there's a little burr on there. Yep, good. And then I'm just gonna slide it up there. Slide this one here. Slide that one on the bottom. Not bad. Right.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, that was it. Okay, great.
Great.
Thanks for coming. All right.
All right, got that one. That was smooth.
That might be the only thing that
I
was smooth
know,
today,
that
but
was good.
it was all right. So then I think Val she really wanted to do some soldering today, she said. So
Yeah,
she's going to jump in.
Okay,
yeah,
so
we got pins, right? Is that
yeah,
what
we
you
do.
wanna show
Oh yeah,
them?
should we do that?
Yeah, I
Okay. So sometimes, like Roy and I said, sometimes I just hold it. If it fits well, I'll just hold it, the corner, and then put solder there. But it gets hot. So, I mean, if you are really having to hang on to it for a few seconds, you might want to use some kind of pins to, these are just the layout block pens that we use for soldering the panels together and stuff. But, so I don't think you need a lot of them, but sometimes if you just put one, they don't really go in. that.
Yeah, and I noticed that, like, you're not going like right up to the corner, right? You left yourself some room
Yeah.
to be able to get the soldering
Right,
iron in
I'm
there.
not sure I left
That's
myself enough.
important.
But anyway, so, I think I just do one corner first, and if I can get one corner, then I'll move around to the others, but, we need a little flux. I know you do all four.
I do all four
Yeah, I'm
sometimes,
sure
yeah.
you probably do.
Not sure what that meant.
Okay, so what you want to do is, I always try to tell people to hold it off to the side, because if you get a little too much solder on there and it drips, you don't really want it to drip on your piece. So I still have to kind of.
Sorry, is it?
My cord is not. So what you're going to do, the motion, I think, is just what we call just sort of down up. And that's it. You don't want to smear it around, or because the more you mess with it, right? The worse it
you want
gets.
some useful as Val did. Go down, come up. I want to point out something that Val did real quick, which was she didn't talk about it, but right before she grabbed some solder, she cleaned the tip of the soldering iron. I mean, just on the damp sponge, so you can hear the noise, right? It's kind of hissing. And then the reason why she did that is because then the solder will grab onto the tip. I don't know if you've experienced it before, where you're trying to add a little bit of solder to something and then carry it over somewhere and it keeps falling off the tip. It's probably just because the tip's a little dirty. So just wipe it on this damp sponge right before you grab some solder, and it will hold on there pretty well.
Well, and I like to spin mine too, so that's another reason that if I don't have to pin everything down, like I said, this would really come in handy. But if you see, Roy did a nice job cutting this, so it fits pretty good. So I don't have to hang on to it very long. It just.
And I know we'll probably get questions. We're working on a homosoak board here.
Oh yeah.
So the pins stick directly into it.
Yeah, we can solder right on it and it doesn't burst into flames.
They are in every single classroom we have here.
Yeah, it's a great surface to cut on too. I know we're not really talking about cutting glass today, but and the homosoak boards are they're just really nice to cut on because they're so friendly to your cutter, right? If you slide off the glass and hit the table, we're just going to hit this homosoak board and it won't do any damage to the.
And the soldering iron isn't going to hurt it either.
Nope.
No, it could scorch it a little bit, so I wouldn't recommend just laying it there for any length of time.
But if you accidentally touch it, it's okay.
Yes. Kids, yeah, I know. So that's all you do. We do what? All four corners, and then the back. We flip it over and do the same on the back.
That's what. Yep. Do all four on one side, flip it over, do that. That's how I do it. Do you?
That's how I do it.
And then I go back and attach all the seams.
I like to not see the seam. So like this one, I can see the.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
So I'm just gonna, I just waited a couple seconds. I grabbed a little bit more, and I'm just gonna go down and up. Might need a little more flux there. That's okay. Okay, and then this one we'll do the last one, and then flip it over.
So I know another reason why I pin the corners or pinch them like Val's doing is because, again, sometimes your panel might not have perfectly parallel straight lines, right, on the outside. So, and as we've mentioned a couple times, the zinc has to come together and touch, or else you won't be able to solder it together.
Yeah, true. So, we don't need to do the other side.
I don't think we need to do the other side. I think you guys get that, right?
But then the other part about this too, that so we're going to bring these solder seams now out and sort of just anchor them on, right? So I really don't want to drag the solder up and over. I kind of just want to. I'll start back in the seam and flux, and then I'll just sort of move towards the frame, and when I get to the frame, I just sort of rock onto it and then come back into the seam. I'm not going to drag to it and then drag off that way, because I'll drag it up onto the.
Yeah.
So the idea here is we're trying not to do anything too. I don't know what the word is, but too messy. I mean, we want to attach it. It gives it good strength, right? So attaching it in all these places is going to give it a little bit more stability. But I don't really necessarily want a lot of extra solder, depending on what's in the seam. This is bugging me.
Yeah, I know it's kind of getting caught on this. So.
Depending on what's in the seam, you know, how much solder's already in the seam. I might not even add any, but here I'll just add maybe just a little bit. And then I'm gonna come up to rock onto back in. So I don't know if you can see, but it's just barely, can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always kind of think of it as kissing it. You know, just barely kissing the frame. So that,
That's nice.
do you like that?
Should get that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, I should. Okay, do I need some here? Let's see. So the thing about, there we go. The thing about too, the frame, you know, the metal is not, doesn't accept solder as easily as like your copper foil or anything. So sometimes if I move up to it, try to rock onto it, and it doesn't seem to attach, you know, it's just because the metal, I think, is too cold. So it may take me 1 or 2 times to actually get the metal so that it gets warm enough to.
Yeah, the zinc sometimes takes a little more heat, you know, especially than the copper foil does.
Yeah.
So sometimes, as Val was pointing out, sometimes you have to hang out a little bit longer with your iron.
So anyway,
Yeah, we do this pretty similar. You and
do
I.
we?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. I just do 1, 2.
It gets, so now that I'm kind of over here, I'm actually making a conscious effort to not touch this with this. And that's sometimes why you want to spin, because, you know, or turn it. So I'm always kind of making sure that as I'm moving, you know, I'm not dragging any part of my iron onto anything, because you could have some solder somewhere, but that's really what you're going to do. And I know sometimes it looks not, you know, but that'll clean up, and it's really not as noticeable as people think it is, you know, but it's really, I think I can almost feel the difference in the stability once you attach some of those,
Yes.
you know, so I would never not attach them, I guess. Is my
Yeah, I think that's real important, right?
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
you should always solder into the zinc. I mean, it's surprising how much, as Val says, you use the word stability, how much stronger the panel feels.
So is that good, or do
That was good.
I don't think I need to keep doing it.
I don't know.
That's all right. I think you should, I know you were impressed. So let's move on to
Okay, let's move on.
the frame.
Yeah, so one
I'll
reason why
put
we
this
wanted to
up
go over doing the zinc frame first was because,
here. You should always do that.
yeah,
right?
you should always do that. You know,
No matter what.
No matter what, you should always put a zinc frame. I mean, if you're, let's say we were putting this in a kitchen cabinet or in our front door, right? We would put zinc around it. I know sometimes people don't.
If they're gonna put it in, I hear that a lot.
Yeah, a lot of times
I don't
they
think I'm
don't,
gonna but it does make it much
And
stronger.
I mean, especially if it's like a door that's being opened and closed, right? That's going to have some vibration to it. The zinc does add some real strength to it and stability.
This is an example. Our good friend George
Yeah,
made this years and years ago.
yeah. George, I mean, that's nice. George Ayers did this really nice panel, and we love keeping it around here. And he did a great job of putting the wood frame around it. But there's zinc around this one too. So
Yeah.
even if you're going to put the wood frame around something, you should put the zinc. And it's the simple reason is because, I mean, the wood frame is only holding the panel. It's not really providing any strength or support to the panel, right? It's really just like it's saying, it's frame that's holding up the panel. So, so you should
And
always
this
do
is
zinc
really
first.
more decorative, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree too, right? I mean, it's not really adding any strength to it other than, I
Right.
guess, protecting the
But
edges.
anyway, we wanted to show you, this is what it
Yes.
actually, you know, what we're going to show you how to do it actually, or looks like this. And it does make a nice finish, I will admit. You know, it's very pretty. Okay.
Yeah, so we sell here at Delphi. So if you haven't noticed a bunch of no,
So I was afraid you're going to burn.
yeah,
Safety first.
yeah, that's really nice. So I probably
Yeah,
won't
take
use
those.
it. Wow, those are really nice. So
Oh my gosh. Okay.
the if you haven't noticed, a lot of stuff we show you are things that you can buy from Delphi. Isn't that kind of an interesting coincidence?
Isn't it a coincidence? Oh my gosh.
But this is the framing stock that we carry here at Delphi. It is oak, so it's an unfinished oak. You'll notice that it doesn't have any stain to it or any varnish on it. We sell it unfinished because we assume people might want to treat the wood, to suit their taste. It comes in 3 different sizes, and again, the sizes refer to the face of the cane. This is a 1 inch, 1 3/8 inch, and then the larger one is a 2 inch. If you look at them from the end, you can see the only difference between them is, so the channel is all the same. It's just the face of the cane that's larger, right? So
Just like the zinc.
yeah. So just because it's a 2 inch frame, the glass doesn't sit all the way to the back of the frame, right? So.
Right. And they do come in 6 foot lengths too. We sell it in 3 foot and then 6 foot. It's
Yeah.
just easier to.
Yeah, it's just easier to get the.
Yeah.
They show you the 3 foot ones instead of 6 foot ones. But what's nice too is that if you're doing a project, and again, they're we saw them 6 foot or 3 feet, you can kind of figure out what size you need. And sometimes it's maybe more economical to buy like a 6 footer and a 3 footer, right, to get what you need instead of buying 2 6 footers or vice versa.
Yep.
So this, I'm going to show you guys how to put this around a panel. I got one. Again, I started one just to make it go a little faster. I'm not sure we're going to show every aspect of this, but let me show you what we have going on. So nobody commented on our nice little flux dishes. Did you see that? Right? Aren't they nice?
I know.
I know Daisy, one of the people that work here in the store, made all those for a classroom. It's a fused little dish, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
it's very cute.
it's a great way of holding a tiny bit of flux. So here's the panel that I'm going to put some frame around. It just, I had an issue earlier with this.
Are you having one now?
I'm having one now.
I think he's having an issue now.
Dang.
What's happening?
Well, so what had happened, well, I'll tell you the story. And then, so we had to, again, as Val showed you just a few minutes ago, how to solder the corners. And then this particular panel is not one that I made. I'm not sure who made it. It's one that was around here at Delphi. And one of the corners, the solder was just a little bigger than what I might have done. And because of that, instead of just heating it back up and flattening it back out, because I didn't want to take the time to do that, I just crammed it in here, and now you can see
Now it's a little
not
tight.
really coming out. But that's.
So you really need to take it out.
I guess I need to take it out. We're not going to take it out. How's that?
Don't take it out.
Let's just leave it.
Problem solved.
Oh, I think we are going to have to take it out.
Oh. Oh my. That was extremely difficult.
No, it's,
Yeah, that's scary.
I know,
I'm like,
I
oh
know,
my
was that-
gosh, thank goodness you got that out.
so was that a little over dramatic about it? Couldn't take it
kinda,
apart?
a
Is that
little
kind
bit.
of
Okay, but
make
there
your
it
comments?
is.
But there you go. So there it is. So I cut on one of the framing stocks. Imagine that this was a longer piece. Like I said, I just cut some smaller ones just to make it a little bit easier to work with. And I always cut a 45-degree angle in this so that I have something to work with. Again, I'm not a math person, so I'm sure there's ways you can figure out how to measure your panel, measure this based on where the channel is at. You could figure out where a 45 might hit. That sounds way too complicated for me. So what I always do is I start with a 45 on one end of a board, and then I'll slide it on here. And then so what we're looking for is here, if you look at it from the top, is I want this 45, I'm going to move it for a second. It needs to meet here. In fact, I'm going to just draw on here just so you can see a little bit better. Do you see? So pretend that that's a 45 right there. And that's where this corner really needs to meet. So if I come in there and set it there, then that's going to tell me where I need to cut on this end. And it's the same deal. Do you see the inside of the cane? That's going to be where that 45 starts. Now the 45 is going to come from here over to here. If you have a compass, you could probably draw it on there. I often, have another piece, where I've cut off 45 somewhere laying around. You can just lay it on there, and as long as you match it up with that one right there,
Yeah, that's what I like.
then you can just trace it. There's your 45, right? So the other thing I often do is, I didn't do it on this one because I didn't make this panel, but whoever made it did a really nice job. I measured it, and it's like a perfect square. But that doesn't always happen. So sometimes you have to do this on every side as you're measuring, right? And then you would cut it. The trick that I do sometimes is, I was telling Val earlier, is sometimes I make this just a hair bigger. So like in this situation, instead of cutting right on my pencil line with the saw, I probably would cut to the outside here of the line, right? So I would probably cut to the side. I'm just drawing on the cane so you can see it easier, right? I would cut to the outside of the pencil line. And the reason why, again, is because, this is assuming that all of my sides are perfectly straight and parallel. And again, it's possible that's not happening. So you could make it a little bit bigger. That gives you a little slop room on the inside. So in case, again, your panel's not totally square. Because I am cutting 45-degree angles, and so it should match up pretty good. I did, I'm not going to cut this here during this presentation. We talked about it. We have a saw in the back, a little nice chop saw for cutting wood that I can just set the angle to 45 and just sit it in there and cut it. They make miter boxes similar to the one that we showed you for the doing the zinc cane, but a little bit bigger for doing wood. You know, if you go to one of the big box, home improvement stores, they sell these like little wood. Those tend to be more wood for cutting, wood. And they have it is marked for a 45 or a 90 degrees, so you can cut either way. Wasn't something I guess that we had. If you have questions more about the actual physically cutting of stuff, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk about that a little bit more. Like I said, mainly I just didn't want to drag the big saw in here to try to show you how to cut this. But otherwise, if you're not familiar, similar to like how I showed you with the cane saw is, I always come down and see where the blade's going to hit before I turn anything on, right? Before I know where it's going to cut. And then it's not a horrible idea either to cut a hair bigger. Because you can always trim the wood down a little bit, right? If you cut it 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch too big, you can go back and just trim off a little bit with the saw, or even with a hand saw if you're doing it by hand. So that's usually my advice to people. In this situation, sometimes what you can do also is, like this one that's a perfect square is, if I've already measured one and cut it, I can lay it on here, and then I can mark where it needs to cut, where that needs to be. So I can mark it here. One way of doing it. Another way of doing it is I do this sometimes. So I'll show you this way. It might be easier to see on the camera. Is I'll do this and then match up the back ends, and then take a pencil line and draw that line, right? That's another way of. So again, for me, I'm trying to take out all the math to trying to figure out exactly where I was at. Someone tried to show me one time, and they were saying, well, if you know how deep the wood is, you can do, I was like, they lost me on that one. So I was like, whoa.
I have to do this.
So anyway, pretend I took this piece of wood, went back, cut it on a saw. So now I've got these, mitered edges, and I've already put some of these together.
So I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, ask me.
Okay. So if you want to stain this, would you recommend doing it before or just doing it when you're finished? Is there any advantage?
Oh, you're doing it before?
Yeah. I don't know.
Wow, one thing is I am not a woodworker, and I'm not sure what probably the best thing to do is.
I don't know. It's not really going to hurt the glass. It would always wash off the glass, wouldn't it? So.
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe.
I would probably assemble it and then stain it. I guess, and then assemble maybe all 3 parts of it, like I'm going to show you here, right? And then do that. So now the trickiest part about this whole setup is drilling the holes in here. Now the way that I have the panel set up here. So it's hard to say with a square, right? But if this was a rectangle, it makes it a lot easier to see it. But the way that you're kind of seeing it, these are the sides, and this is the top and the bottom. So what's important about that is we're going to use these framing screws, they're called. So here's a pack of them here. They're brass, which the advantage of brass is it's a stronger, tougher metal, and it's decorative, right? It's nice looking little brass. You'll see, because you're going to see this on the outside of the cane. We can see it on this one here, right? You'll see the heads of the screws. So if you make them, the brass makes it just look a little nicer. But what we're going to do is we're going to screw in like this, because that's where the strength is at, right? If this is the top and that's the bottom, if I put the screw in here, all the weight of the panel is pulling against those screws, and then you run the risk of, especially on a big piece, of that eventually pulling out someday. So we always put the screws in horizontal. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, good.
And you have to also kind of be a little careful that you don't get, because your glass is going to get in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, oh yeah.
You want to not get too far down, because you do have to allow for the fact that your glass is going to be recessed up in that channel. Yes. So.
Yep. Yeah, good point. So then how do you know where to screw it? Right? If we're looking at this end here, right? If we're looking at this end, as Val's pointing out, where do I put a screw that I'm not going to screw into the channel of the piece? Well, it's real easy. So again, you probably have more than likely a piece of leftover wood laying around, and you could do this before you cut anything too. On this nice squared edge, I can see that, again, this is 1 3/8. So I can see where that is at, and all I did was, oh, I didn't grab a ruler. Oh, can you?
Yep.
This one right behind you. Well, I didn't grab a ruler, I just left it on the other table. So we can just measure that, and if you look, it's about 1 inch, right? So, and then I'm just gonna, so if I go 1/2 inch, that's gonna be right in the middle of that board. So on the outside of this piece, oh, this is the one I'm gonna drill. So I would just come down and measure 1/2 inch, right? So I'm gonna come here, measure 1/2 inch. That's gonna tell me where I'm gonna put my screw. If you're like me, I would come and measure it again this way, just so I know the dead center. But you can you can get you could probably eyeball it close enough to what we're trying to do. But anyway, so there's the center, and then that's where I'm gonna screw into here. Now, working with oak is a really hard wood, so you're not gonna be able to just screw into here and screw into the other piece. You're gonna split the wood all up. So what we're gonna have to do is drill it first. And again, if I could hold it here, try to drill through it, and then try to hold this one and drill it. But what works is what's called a corner vise. Sometimes they call it like a 90-degree corner vise. Not something, this might surprise you, not something that Delphi sells. So something, again, you can pick up at a lumber yard, woodworking place. Again, the big box stores all have them. But what's super nice about this is, I'm confusing myself, is I can set the boards in here. And this was like $10. So I mean, this little corner screw thing, really quite inexpensive. I know. Sorry, I have to do it off the table. So this thing actually is. Let me show you again real quick. Is that this is made so you can mount it to a table, which I can tell you makes it like probably 100 times easier. Screw it in, and then it's not going to move around on you, right, as you're trying to do it. So I'm going to try to do this while it sort of moves around, but I think I have something to hopefully make it a hair easier for me. So mainly all we're going to do is just kind of push these up until they kind of meet up like this. Get them as close as you can get them. Then I'm going to use this little vise here, tighten that down so it's not going to move. I'm going to do the same thing on this one, tighten this one down so it doesn't move. Right? And so now I don't have to worry about when I'm going to screw into this one, and it will screw right into that one and it'll line right up perfectly. I don't have to worry about trying to hold on to both of them and trying to stabilize them somehow. No, I hadn't actually drilled this one. I thought I was going to do this.
So do you do this to drill it?
Do this live.
But you could do this to drill your hole too, right? To hold it together. No.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's what you're doing.
That's what I think I'm doing. But
All right.
let me grab just a couple of things here that didn't know I did this. So we have plenty of tools here at Delphi all over the place, and this is like the third drill that I started with earlier today for a variety of reasons. Now here's another thing that I'm going to try to do because this makes it easier, but I don't have the clearance, so we're going to have to do something. We're going to do it clearly.
Why don't you let me take out the middle one?
Oh, that'll work. Sorry, guys. This is the most riveting part of the whole thing. I know, and I'm kind of doing it backwards, so I know you're not going to be able to see it real well.
I might try to come around.
Do you want me to do it on that side of the table? Try to
Sure.
do it.
Well, I mean, I can come around too.
Yeah, she can. Okay, well,
Now I'm going to do it.
That'll just move the center.
Thanks, Val. I don't need a lot of space. Yeah, I just need this much space.
Okay.
Is that good?
This is totally good.
All right.
So then I'm just going to come in and clamp this, just so, because I can't hold on to the, everything in with one hand.
And you're clamping the metal piece, not the wood.
Yes, yeah, good point. Clamping the metal piece. Again, so this whole thing is stable now, so I don't have to try to stabilize it. Of course, the table is not like super stable, but that's okay.
No, it's not.
And then we're gonna come in, see if I got enough power in this one. Man, if I was left-handed, this would be perfect. Okay, so can you kind of see it? So I'm gonna come in here, line that up, try to get it as level as I can. So with the oak, like I said, it's a pretty hard metal, or tough, hard wood. So I got to, sometimes you got to drill and then go back out and then come back in. Yeah, I think the battery on this is, yeah, that's it.
You stuck.
That was it. Nice. Okay, so.
Hey, look what I brought.
What'd you get? Oh, man, nice.
I know.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to get this.
I know, but it's.
Well, while you're wiggling that out, I'll read what Mary has to say. She says, "Thank you for the video. I'm just learning how to make wood frames. I'm learning a lot." And that is not the first comment we've seen come through today. So thank you guys. We're glad that you're learning a lot.
So stay tuned. We're going to maybe see how to take the bit out of the wood when it's stuck.
I think the problem is
The battery.
the battery is too dead, and so it can't. Yeah, it's not gonna
Okay, well, we get it.
You get that? Well,
I get it. We get it. And you've already pre-drilled this other one, so you can show. You may have to screw this one in by hand.
well, I grabbed a screwdriver just for that very, very reason. So,
Okay.
but yeah, so you get the idea, right? So I'm drilling in there. That thing's stuck together. Let's pretend like.
Let's look at that real quick, Val.
Is that what you want me to do?
Mhm.
Okay. And then we've already got this one screwed. This corner's already screwed, so that's what we're going to need to do to the other one. Yes.
All right, pretend like that one is. I think it's stuck in. Yeah, I screwed the other one.
Yeah, this one's screwed.
Nice.
Okay.
So, this in there. This slides in, right? This one goes on, and then I would, screw it in here. Right. This one I've already pre-drilled, so this one I had done earlier, and then I would come in, screw this in. Again, I could do it by hand, but you get the idea. I think with the thing not working, so but.
The drill not working.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
I swapped the batteries too and everything.
I know
Anyways,
what you said.
you get the idea with that too.
Right.
So last one is, so then this one is after you get all these three done, so that you slide your panel in, the last one would come in, sit on top, and then, again, the thinking is I would have drilled that one right, and then we would have screwed that one in, and then, I know, really the panel goes this way because that's the hole I was drilling. And then I would come in through there. This one.
So
would,
you do top and bottom both. You do not just one side. You're going to do
Yep.
top and
Yeah,
bottom.
and then
on
we
both
would
sides.
drill this one and do the exact same thing, right? I would hold it in that vice clamp, drill it, put the screw in. Good.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So show them the.
This is like really one lovely piece. I think it's going to be available for sale.
We'll auction
I
it
can
off.
do it.
Okay, well then talk about. So this one's finished. So this is a
Yeah,
good
this
one
one's-
to show. So here it is, and then here it is up here. What he was just showing you how to do, and then this is a different.
Yeah, that was a
Little-
really nice little way of hanging it, right? So
makes
the,
it real secure.
the question is, how are you going to hang them once you're done? And again, we recommend hanging them from the sides and not from the top for something I talked about earlier, right? And if we drill, like even if you use like ice screws or something in here, it's gonna, all the weight is on that top piece of wood, and then you run the risk of it starting to compromise somewhere.
Plus, they're not very pretty either. I mean, this makes it
Yeah.
finish nicer.
Right, because then you can
Yeah.
hang a chain from there, hang a chain from the other side. This is what those look like. They're just, bent hook hangers, if you can see what those are. Oh, yeah, can we show the zinc one real quick? I want to do that. we talked about it, but I wanted to show it real quick. We talked about leaving the holes open, at the top and on the bottom, and then so the point was, as Val was mentioning, is we can put a ring in there, a handy hanger. If you're familiar with those, the handy hangers slide right into the zinc. I mean, they're the perfect width for just sliding right in there. And then the holes on the bottom, as Val mentioned, it's a great way of letting any moisture or water drain out of this after you clean it, right? Usually we go to the sink and use some flux remover and try to get rid of that. And so we're not going to leave any trapped moisture inside the zinc because it can all drain out. And, if this panel is hanging, I mean, you're not going to see any holes on the bottom unless you're, on your hands and knees looking up at it or something. But hopefully that helps with that.
So that's about it.
Yeah, I think that was it. Hopefully, I mean, sorry I couldn't finish the last few minutes there of putting it together, but I think you guys get the idea. And I don't know if you're like me, it was getting kind of boring there at the end. So, but
it wasn't quite like fixing a broken piece. We were getting close.
it was real close. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Send us some suggestions.
Yeah, we'll be back in a couple weeks, we think, and who knows?
Who knows what we're gonna do?
What we're gonna have.
It'll be great.
It'll be great.
It'll be okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us.